Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com, and in this tutorial we're going to start looking at databases, and we're going to look at creating the code that actually can create a database in Android. Now, Android comes with the SQLite database built into it, so we'll use that. It's a fully functional relational database, and we'll use it here in this series of tutorials to store the sequence of points that the user clicks on this image as a sort of pass key to get into the next screen. So we want a database table that's capable of storing points, and I'm going to right click here and create a new class, and I'm going to encapsulate all my database functionality in one class, which I'm going to call database, since I've only got one of them. And I'm going to say that database extends a class called SQLite Open Helper, so this class here, and that's an abstract class. So I'm going to click this error message and go to add unimplemented methods, and we've got an onCreate method here and an onUpgrade. And I'm also going to click again and create a constructor here. But in fact, this constructor, you'll see, has 4 arguments, and I only want to pass in the first argument, and you'll see why in a minute. Now the context is going to be, for the context I'm going to pass in a reference, the this reference from the activity that I use this database from. Name is the name of the database, and SQLite actually stores databases in files that you usually give a .db extension. So I'm just going to call this, let's call it notesquirrel.db, or actually I could call it note.db. It doesn't have to be unique because it's only going to be kind of private to this application anyway. Yeah, so anything really is fine. And the factory here, I'm just going to set to null. We won't bother with that. And the version here I'll set to 1. And the kind of SQLite Open Helper has kind of automatic facility for upgrading your database, but I'm not going to use it here. I'm just going to create the database. So that's the constructor finished, and I'm going to go back to my image activity class. And image activity this is the activity that I want to use that database, and I want it to store points, or to be able to check points against the ones stored in the database when the user clicks the image. So I'm going to give it here a private database. I'll call it db equals new database. I'll just give it an instance of that class that I've created so that I can work with it here, and I've got to pass in the this reference here. And yeah, that should do the trick. Okay, and let's go back to database now. And now in create here, I need to execute some SQL that will actually create my database. So let's have a string here, string SQL, and this has got to be the database creation SQL. And once I've formed that string, I'll say db.exec SQL and just pass that in, and that will create my database. Now you're probably wondering when onCreate gets called, and the answer is that it's not called when you run the constructor. It's called when you try to use your database. And in this tutorial I won't be using the database, so I'm just focusing on setting it up. So we won't create it here, but this onCreate method is kind of intelligently run the first time you actually try to do something with the database. So we don't have to worry about running it ourselves. And if we just go to Google and type in here SQLite data types, you can find, of course, lots of documentation on the SQLite website, and you can work with these data types here. And I'm just going to use integer because I just want to store an ID, a row ID, plus x and y coordinates. But you can see you've also got real, text and blob, so there's a variety of types there. And for the database creation code, I'm going to say well, actually this is going to create the database. The fact that I've specified a database name here, and the database will be created automatically when you try to do something with it. But in fact what we want to create here is not the database, but just a table. So I'm going to say here, create table, and we'll call this table points, and I need to specify my columns in brackets here. So I'm going to have ID, let's put it in uppercase so it doesn't matter, ID integer primary key, and let's have x integer not null, and y integer not null. And that should do the trick for my database creation code. So I just have the one table at the moment, and in the next tutorial we'll get on to doing some stuff with this database, but I think I'll leave it there for the moment because there's not much more to be done on actually creating the database. So join me again next time, and until then, happy coding.